India. And yeah, I'm at my home.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's great. I just, is it okay if we will record our call?
Absolutely, no problem.
Perfect. Now we just have to wait for Christina and Jürgen Göres to join us. I don't know, just...
No problem. Let me sit with, in the meanwhile, switch on the aircon. We still live in a very tropical place, you know. It's kind of, we
Great.
have a,
Is it very warm?
it's kind of, you know, like it's a tropic, so there's, you know, you can see the beach, which is not very far from here.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah. We have a better view of the beach from here. That's, there we go. That's the ocean.
Oh, wonderful. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
And how much? I mean, it's very warm and humid. Actually, it seems like a very tropical.
Yes, yes, it is a, you know, we are in the tropics. You know, the equator is not very far from here. We are actually between, I can see some smell.
Christina?
We are actually between equator and the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere. So it's quite warm out here and humid.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let me just check quickly where Christina.
Okay.
I'm just calling her quickly. Oh, no fun. Bon. But I think this video conference we started in late September last time, and we do it step by step, and it was a very good beginning with Florian Dietrich and Ina Rudolph from London joining, and David Stern from Kiev joining. And I would suggest, I mean, they couldn't join this time. So maybe with the two of us, we will just keep this conversation today, maybe even just the two of us, if this is okay for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have to move forward, and we will see who is joining and who is open for the conversation. So great that you found time and yeah, I mean we see for the first time.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of work incidentally, I spoke to this friend of mine, the person who's a musician, and he is, in many ways, there's a lot of similarity between you and him. It's because he is again committed to music, more classical music, and he also is committed to getting children to participate and and have a different perspective of the world by engaging in classical music.
And having he does it in India. It's where is he working and based?
So he's right now moved back to India, but he used to teach in the US. So he was attached to the Miami University. I'll send you some links of this guy. And he always conducted, he's a conductor himself. And he has always worked on ensembles. Very similar. There's a lot of similarities between what you do and what he does. brings groups from Africa, from India, and everybody to the US and gets children to start doing their own ensembles. And he has a lot of experience in doing that. About 10 years ago, or about 6 years ago, he decided to move back to India. And that is when, there's also a very, very famous Indian musician. He's also a Grammy winner. His name is Rahman. A.R. Rahman is the name of that musician. Very popular.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he was also a musician for a couple of Hollywood films. There was a very famous film called The Slumdog Millionaire, and he got his Grammy for that particular, the playback for that movie is what got him the Grammy. And he is, this guy, about 7 years ago, they met, and Srini used to organize the US tours and integration with the music world of the US for A.R. Rahman, who was a very, very Indian musician. And later, A.R. Rahman wanted Srini to come back to India and set up an academy for classical music, and which is what he did. So he was the founding dean of this classical music institution, which is, almost like a lab. It's a laboratory of music. It's completely funded by this big musician guy who's he's a very popular musician and a very rich person too. So
where is it? Where is he based?
It's in Chennai. In
Chennai. Okay.
Yeah, in Chennai. Chennai is like Madras, the city where I live. It's in this city.
Okay.
Yeah, so he set it up, and then he transferred it back to, now it's an institution where they teach music. They also integrate a lot of, different kinds of Indian classical musics. They kind of revive various schools and popularize them, and, provide very good facilities for students to practice, and things like that. So it's a conservatory, so to say. It's less of an academy, but it's more like a conservatory where very good musicians can come and practice there, and they will have opportunities to document their music, record their music, and connect with. So it's more a conservatory, is what he founded.
Interesting, but do I understand right? They focus mainly on Indian classical music and the preservation and conservation of Indian classical music.
Yeah, in the conservatory, yes. In the conservatory, it is more. But then, like this week, you have the Zubin Mehta Foundation, which is actually coming down in October. They're coming down to the conservatory. And Srini is very, very well connected with all this. So they do a lot of fusion. They do a lot of conservatory, but then they're also trying to find a lot of synthesis with, other music and what it can do to bring people together. So he's got some, I will integrate you with him. He's very eager. He actually wanted to join today, but so one of the things which Srini has taken up is he trains underprivileged children in India. The children from the slums of India, children from the orphanages of India who are underprivileged, and he teaches them Western classical music.
Interesting, and they have also instruments. I mean, they have violins or woodwind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he trains them, he develops them, and he gets them to perform, and things like that. So and then he also has been working with schools. He works with children in a couple of schools, and takes the children abroad, takes them to US, gets them to perform, and things like that. So that's what he does a lot. Very global in his perspective, but you learn more about him when you.
How would you describe like very global in his perspective? In which sense?
So he is, because he is basically a synthesizer. You know, he likes to synthesize various musics. So a lot of the theaters, what he has, a lot of the staging, what he has done in the US, is all got to do with. In fact, in US, it used to be called Global Rhythms. That
Huh?
was that his organization is called Global Rhythms. Right?
Interesting.
Global Rhythms.
What does that mean? Like,
So yeah, so you can search in YouTube. There's a lot on global rhythms, and you can see what he does. Definitely, there is a strong. His foundation is classical Hindustani music, right? Hindustani classical music is the music of you can say the music of northern India, and it is
yeah,
also like classical Indo-Islamic music, right?
fascinating.
Classical Indo-Islamic music with very deep roots into Sufi tradition, right?
Hmm.
Into the Sufi tradition. So they have a lot of.
Hello, all of you.
We are the three of us. We're actually waiting for Christina Alessandro joining.
Okay,
But we
great.
already entered into great conversation with
Yeah.
Mahesh Sriram. He's joining us from Chennai in India.
Ah, great. Welcome.
And you are joining from Berlin also.
Right. I'm old media guy.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm largely into management education. That's my profession.
Okay.
But essentially, what I do is I develop people on globalization, or it's reversed. I try to get people to be, participate, make the world a better place. So I develop leaders in those,
Okay. Great. So maybe we can join and do something together. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Maybe you could shortly introduce yourself
Yeah,
with
I
your
would like
background.
to. Yeah, my name is Jürgen Göres-Petry. It's a complicated name. You can call me Jürgen, for example. And I'm working for a German broadcast station. It's called German Radio, Deutschlandradio. We have 3 programs. We are like NPR for Germany, something like that. We have 3 programs like an information radio. This is Deutschlandfunk. And a cultural program and a more youth knowledge orientated program. And my background is I'm an engineer I'm now all around nearly 60 years old. An engineer and Tonmeister, and worked for management in this broadcast station or other broadcast stations in Germany for around 20 years. That's my background. I'm very into new things like online, what we are doing with our program, with our audio and all that. And, very curious to think about new things that happen in the media. That's my point.
Fabulous.
Hi there.
Fabulous. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
A short question before. Is it we are recording this little conference? Is this okay with you? Just to
No problem.
wonderful. Mahesh, maybe we keep for the moment just to let you finish your thought, because you described very very interestingly the background of one of your colleagues who is involved in the organization which is called Global Rhythm, and this Hindustani classical Hindu music, like from the perspective of Indian classical music. Just to let you finish your thought, because very fascinating, very interesting.
Yeah. So we were just, Jürgen, we were just talking about one particular person whom we tried to bring him in today, but we were a little late. He used to teach music in the Miami school, but he's a very practicing kind of a teacher. So more than teaching, he was developing, he was teaching music like all classical music teachers, right? So basically getting students to come out of themselves and, be artists. So he's done that a lot in his life. And he's a very interesting guy, and I'm going to definitely bring, he was very interested to get into this, but it just didn't work today. And he has, his grounding is in a music tradition called Hindustani. Hindustani is a Indo-Islamic music tradition. It's kind of, its classical traditions are more from the 12th and the 13th and the 14th century, even though you can trace it back to several centuries. It started having proper schools, various schools and patrons, and it started getting categorized into proper classical schools beginning in 12th century and all the way until about 17th and 18th century. So it's an awesome school called the Hindustani school. India has got two schools of classical music. We have the Hindustani school in North India, and then we have something called as the Carnatic school in southern India. So there are two schools, of which this person was trained in Hindustani music, but he was more global in his approach. A lot of his teachers, he went on to learn more on Western classical music. Many of his teachers were from Goa. There is a state in India called Goa, and Goa used to be a Portuguese colony. And so he has a lot of teachers from there. And from there on, he went to US, and then he taught there for many years. He's come back to India. And in the last 6 years, what brought him back to India was a very famous, popular musician in India called Rahman, A.R. Rahman, who is also a Grammy Award winner and a very, very popular musician with a huge fan following in the world, I would say, not just in India. So this guy became friendly with Srini in the US. They did a few shows together in the US. And then he brought Srini back to India and gave him a project which he was very interested, which is to set up a music conservatory, right? So India has got hundreds and thousands of music traditions, which are kind of partly folk, partly classical. Sometimes it is just a folk tradition of one little endogenous group of people. And then it starts getting classicalized because it gets absorbed into other schools and things like that. So there are various schools lying all over the place. Sometimes there are little institutions which will just be practiced by one little village, and it will belong there, it was born there, and it will always be there. So many of these little institutions are kind of dying out. So they built this conservatory for artists like this to come and perform, for them to document, and for them to conserve their music tradition. So he did that for a while, and now he is gone back to teaching. He teaches classical music for underprivileged children, free of cost, without charging them, but raises funds from different institutions and things like that. So he will be a very interesting addition to our group. Also because when I told him about this, he was also saying that, hey, look, even I started like this, with no, I just had we just wanted to come here and start something in India and basically to serve a group of, just to popularize music and do good things for young kids through music. And that's what he's doing. And I think this will be a great forum for him to also expand his network and connect with good people,
Yeah, great.
Oh, thank you very much, Mahesh. I mean, it's an interesting link to the general line where we try to really to get a larger and more clearer picture of the enormous diversity of different perception and different traditions, ideas, what classical music in very various contexts of the world means. And if I may just summarize again what we in our first little conference, the positions we got together. It was very fascinating. For example, Florian Dietrich, to summarize, his idea was that the role of culture and classical music must be completely rethinked. And for example, that the Sacred Symphony Orchestra and the Sacred Cultural Bell, the ideas we are working on, can help by involving for example, an audience in the process to give meaning back to key ideas. So we have like certain key ideas which need to be think and where we have the opportunity and chance to give a different meaning. Then Cristina D'Alessandro had an interesting position. Focus on have an eye of the interrelation between the global approach and the embedding. Like you just told, for example, in Chennai, where you have a conservatory, you have different different regions in India, for example, and to think about cooperation and exchange. Then another interesting position was Ina from London. She mentioned that classical music in a wide sense can be a bridge in regions where dialogue became nearly impossible due to radical language. So the radicalization of language as a big issue in communication. So very good suggestion. From David Stern from Kiev, he had an interesting point also, that he said the potential and talent, for example, in Silk Road countries, or actually in many parts of the world where we are questioning what classical music means in the 21st century. He said it just needs sometimes a little sparkle, a little a dialogue, something we are starting to exchange, where we get into in a larger idea of how we can use all this potential for empowering and enriching certain specific audiences. So that was a very good result from the last. Unfortunately, this time they Ina excused us that David is in New York, so he's sleeping right now. And for today, it would be great if we, as I wrote, we are very much looking for a solution at the moment, how we can actually use the diversity and involve the diversity of all the positions which come together to get a clearer picture of what the Silk Road Cultural Belt as an idea could be as a narrative, for example, for Europe in a larger sense. And that would be interesting to know your ideas and your thoughts in the context of the enormous diversity of ideas what classical music can mean.
For Europe, maybe what seems to be the most important things that we are all thinking about in this region, for example, in Berlin or in other countries, in let's say in Spain or in Italy. It is money for the first thing, and that housing is very expensive. But what is what is lying beyond there? We see in political sense a direction. Everything is going to the right of the political. It's not in the middle. We are not, and we are thinking more in terms of times that I thought when I grew up and went political. I thought nobody will ever talk about this, but we are talking right now in this time about things like clans in Berlin, for example. And what is the idea behind that? That means here are Arabic clans and they try to catch our life and live their own lives up here. And what is maybe an idea of bringing them to integrate into our society? And I think this is a problem not only for Germany, not only for Berlin. It's a problem of maybe the world. I don't know. And maybe it's classical music as something that is that the people listen to Bach all over the world, for 300 years and more. Classical music in that sense is maybe the only language that everybody can talk and everybody can understand. And maybe what Silk Road or the orchestra at the end can maybe, and at that point do, is bring the people together to listen to the same thing and understand. Maybe it's maybe the only universal language at all. In my opinion, I don't know what an Arabic socialized man or woman would think about that. I don't know. I really don't know that. But maybe it's a chance to get into a language to develop the world to a better place, to make it a better place. I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, I'm very glad that we have very diverse already. In the three of us. It's great, Mahesh, to have you with your perspective of classical music and the idea of this word classical and music. I mean, there's a very rich experience, a very rich heritage in India. Also to integrate certain extreme positions and to have an exchange, as you mentioned, from your friend who's using his experience to teach and to educate and to involve children and youth with a social background where it's very difficult. I mean, also in India to involve them, to motivate them, to have them really committed and to develop certain skills and curiosity and a wide focus. So how would you see this in this context?
I think so, because, I was just, when Jürgen was saying, what was running in my mind was exactly, applying the same context in India, and it was kind of, almost running like a film in my mind, how true it is. And what I wanted to say was, like, for example, you may want to write down this key word, what I say, right? And the key word, what I'm going to be saying is Bhakti, B-A-K, right? B like Bravo, A like Alpha, K like King, B-A-K-T-I. T like Tommy and I like India. Bhakti, okay? And then there's movement, Bhakti movement, okay? Movement is like M-O-V-E-M-E-N-T, Bhakti movement. Now, Bhakti movement is like a phase. It's a period which happened in India sometime in the 15th and 16th century. And that's the time when India was going through a very challenging time of divisions of the society because of religious grounds. So the Hindus and Muslims, we always had issues for centuries, but it was more a political division. The ruling class could have been Muslims, then the ruling class were kind of Hindus, but then it's a country which was like Germany before Bismarck. We had 300 different kingdoms. Some of them were Muslim, some of them were Indian, Hindu. This was going on. So religion was not a major issue to divide people on religious grounds, because wars and problems and feuds were only with the ruling class, and it was with the army. But when it came to people in a village, you would have people who are Hindus. You would also have people who were Muslims. And there was a lot of social interdependency between them. Within the Muslim community, there would be different caste groups, right? What I mean by caste group is you can associate it like a professional group. One particular caste could be a cobbler, another caste could be somebody who works on brass, another caste could be somebody who's working on pottery, right? And then there were caste groups who were Hindus, okay? So there was interdependency amongst themselves. Within a village, there was no religious divisions, could not kind of percolate, because there was a caste-based interdependency. But sometime in 15th and 16th century, there was a problem which was happening, right? India was getting divided because of on the religious grounds. So Bhakti movement is a period when in India, a series of saints, or we call them saints. These are people who, social reformers, you can call them. They came and they were all musicians. They all sang songs and they made people chant whatever they sing. And all they were singing was all about social harmony. And they said that if you want to come, it is music, it is joy, you're going to sing and we're going to dance. And we're going to just say that there is one big being out there and we don't want to qualify him, right? It's an unqualified being. And when you sing, it gives us joy. And that whole movement was known as the Bhakti. It's called the Bhakti movement and the Bhakti philosophy. So that is something which happened in India. And after many years, once again, you just mentioned about the right, movement in India, the right wing and the kind of religious, or what do you call it, the Hindu religious, propagators or advocates are kind of gotten together. I mean, it's all kind of synthesized together. It comes in one package. So if you're a right wing, you're also kind of religiously, so that's for the first time in India, it's happening. We are seeing the same thing, whatever you just said. It's even scary in India today to talk secular. It's because the authority and the ruling and the right-wing thinking and the Hindu nationalist kind of a thinking, everything goes together, right? And people who are on the left side are people who are saying global, people who are saying that you can't divide people by religion, you can't divide people by caste, and you can't be so nationalistic. You got to grow up and go beyond nationalism. Now we become the left. So, one crazy thought which is coming out of whatever you just said is that, the Silk Road, group is going to take up just identifying the Bhakti movements, and we actually activate small little concerts in different villages. Now, nobody's going to be, because this is Bhakti. This is like, reviving a traditional art. And these are fabulous art forms are there. Bhakti-based art forms are so many. So there are art forms, and all these art forms, the artist will come and eventually he'll come down, and what he'll say is that, look, we are all one, and, in music and dance, like in a transcendental stage, there's only one, there's only one being, and that's us, right? It's a weird thought, but, that is just stemming from wherever you left.
No, interesting.
I have to Google that Bhakti movement.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I just said I have to Google that Bhakti movement.
No, but it's fascinating because this is a chance to really learn from each other.
Yeah, right.
And
it is similar to the 60s, 70s a folk singer, songwriter in America, for example. Maybe it's like that. It's not classical music, but it's music. I mean, it's a universal language, whatever.
Exactly. I'm taking a caveat here because, sometime back, I think, you mentioned this twice in today's conversation, Martis, and you said we got to define what, the unreconciled thing is, what is classical music?
Yeah, right.
So
what could be the different idea, and what could be also a modern meaning, because it needs. I mean, there is not one single answer to it. There are like as many answers as there are people.
Yeah.
And still, we need to understand what are the key questions which help to arrive to answers which make sense. And that's fascinating what you are referring to with the Bhakti movement, because they had certainly a certain idea of what can bring, mobilize, activate certain social or personal benefits and qualities, certain basic human qualities. And it would be interesting to know more how they did this and how you would translate this approach, for example, in a European context. Can you imagine to translate this, or which elements would you translate and how?
I have no, not much of an idea here, but I would only say that this is very interesting in a sense. Two thoughts are coming out. One is that, classical is yes, but at the same, one of the anchor points is, in fact, stemming from these musicians of the Bhakti movement. What they did was they made it almost impossible for people to say that I want to stay divided. They didn't say that you are wrong, or they didn't say that the other person is right and I am right and you are wrong. They never got into that argument at all, right? They just went into a very high transcendental state of music and chanting and songs, and said that there is some, like there is a witness which is inside of you, and in a very high state of music, that witness is present and everything else is absent. And when that witness is kind of evoked, all of us become only one. There is only one energy, we are all together. So they were only saying that we all got to go there because at that spot we are all kind of undivided, right? So let's just go there, was their message. And that was becoming very impossible or very difficult. You might be a Muslim, you might be a Hindu, you might be that, you might be this. But it's very difficult for you don't even have to accept it, but it's very difficult for you to deny that message which comes out saying that we are one at the end of the day, right? And let's celebrate. So they managed, there are some, it should be interesting to see how that thought can apply in today's, world, because one of the things which, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit strange, but most of the words I get.
Okay. So I think one of the things is, like wrestling with whether it's the Hindu fundamentalists or whether it is the right wing, wrestling is going to be an impossible and a very difficult.
And do I understand you right, Mahesh, that the challenge is that on one side there is the need to find what really holds us together, and what is really a uniting power, or like really which is for some focus, who is keeping the basic qualities in the center, and at the same time there is this need to be very specific, to be very clear, so to have also certain definitions, because in the end there is also the necessity to communicate very clearly, to have a very clear frame of values which need to be defined very clearly. And this would be interesting to have this, to know more how, for example, Jürgen, how do you see this challenge? For us it's nearly a paradox to have this unifying idea of all being one, and the necessity to be very precise, very specific, and to differentiate also.
I'm not sure if that's what's your name again, please?
Mahesh.
Mahesh. What Mahesh did. What I understood from his speech before was the thing was not argumenting, not to go in a fight with the people. This movement, what you're talking about, is it's like get what the other position is, but to breathe with it, not to fight against.
Yeah.
That's what I understood. And so is to be precise,
Yeah.
Moritz, what you say
Yeah.
might end in an argument to say, I'm right, you're not right, or vice versa.
Yeah.
The other thing is, hi, I accept what you say.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm with you or I'm not with you, but at the end, I don't fight against you. Maybe this is a chance. What is that? Maybe this is a chance of getting in touch with the other soul.
Yeah.
Maybe via music. I don't know.
Yeah. I think we're getting there. Yeah. Let me bring another context. So far we are talking about, uh, divisions within smaller geographies, right? So we are talking about divisions within, let's say within Germany, divisions within India, and the divisions within India is different from the divisions within Germany. Then there are divisions within Europe. Then there are divisions between Europe and India, in India and China, and between, when you draw the Silk Road belt, it's a fairly large, it's a big challenge. It's a huge vision. It's not small. And from that context, I have traveled very extensively on the China Silk Road. Very passionate about that part of China, from Xi'an all the way to the China and Pakistan border. I've traveled very extensively. What is today known as the Uyghur belt, the belt where you have, a big Muslim population. There is also the Taklamakan Desert there, and there is an awesome lot of music there. That music, they are all Tibeto-Mongol, Indo-Islamic music, right? So they're all one. There is a similarity in their music. They all have Islamic slant to it. They all have a Turkic slant to the whole thing, and they also have touches of Himalayan, Tibetan, Buddhist, and Indian kind of a thing. So now that's a huge corridor. Now, that spot, I don't know how to explain this. Now, imagine today today we are going to be. Let's assume that the Silk Road, the Callias Foundation is going to be putting up a concert in China, in Xinjiang province. Let's say we want to go there and do a concert. And in the concert, we are going to say that, we want to do a concert. And there are about 14 different, what you call as very ancient desert music schools in China. And these are very, 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 they were super classical schools during the 15th and 16th century. And then they kind of died out because of various reasons.
Mahesh, your voice is now it's better, I think.
Okay.
So, now it's much better.
So these are fabulous schools in a very large geography, but they are all schools which are very centered in oases of the desert. So there are about 14 oases, and each oasis has got one particular kind of music vision.
They are all particular kind of idea of classical music. What means classical music?
Not music. Music or classical music? What do you think?
It is, as I said, it is a Islamic classical tradition, right?
Yeah.
It is Persian, Turkish Persian Islamic classical tradition. Yeah, so it is their music. It's their music.
Yeah. But it's their classical music, right?
Yeah. But it's got, what I mean is, why I'm saying it's classical is it's got an institution, it has got a council, right? And it's got a, it's got a governing body which defines what their music is. right? And then there is also grouping and subgrouping and things like that. And they have performing traditions, which they've been practicing, which begins from making of instruments to, choir to occasions to everything, right? So there's a whole institution around that. So there are 14 such institutions in China, and China is actually preserving them by funding these institutions and helping them to conserve it. But at the same time, there is also a big problem today because that entire area, China is kind of transforming, or rather, we are dealing with them with an iron fist because they don't want. What China believes is that it's better to prevention is better than cure, is what is China's strategy. So what they say is that the moment we see that there is a group which has got anything, if they show any signs of becoming a radical Islamic movement, then we catch them and put them in these big, discipline schools, and the whole family goes into the school, which is a huge campus, and then they're going to be there inside for 2 years, and we will train them to forget about everything,
You've lost me. You've lost me. I cannot follow you. Where are you now? Where is the point?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I'm sorry. Yeah, I kind of drifted off and went away somewhere.
A little
but
bit,
what I'm
yes.
trying to say is, I'm just saying that, like if we were to, do a show there, or if we were to sponsor a particular group there, let us assume that there is a connect.
Yeah.
Right? Now you end up dealing with big problems. Big challenges. Right?
Big challenges, right?
Yeah, major
we want
challenges.
solutions.
Yeah. So the scope is too huge, The scope is too huge. Even if you say that you want to go to China and you want to unify through music.
No, I understood your point. It is, one of the biggest challenges is first to deal with the enormous diversity of how specific groups, regions along the Silk Road, and generally how people understand in the 21st century the idea of classical and the idea of music, and to connect this concretely, like to imagine a concert in these 14 oases in China you mentioned. This implies and means a lot of practical challenges, which for the moment it's not so much our priority, especially in this context. The priority is really to start through this video format also in a dialogue where we can learn about the positive part, the convincing or the qualitative part of the differences we can learn from. So you are explaining about the many different influences, like Himalayan, Tibetan influences, Mongolian influences, for specific traditions, for specific ideas of quality, specific musical traditions, which then in these regions are called classical. This is very fascinating because I think one of the challenges is that there is, in each region, you have either Eurocentric or China-centric or Mongolian-centric or Islamo-centric or Hindu-centric position, and not a really open position to really understand better the different quality of the specific tradition or the specific idea. And it's very valuable what you just mentioned about I think you mentioned 10 different influences. And from what you wrote me also, you traveled extensively, you made a lot of recordings, video recordings also, and you spoke to many people. in different villages, in different parts of not only India. And how do you, I mean, what did you observe when it comes to a very different, when it comes to very different ideas of what means classical? Is there openness? Is there a awareness that for these differences in a positive way?
Well, I think from whatever I've seen, people are music schools or music institutions, right? They're very, very inward looking. In a sense, it's not that they don't know anything other than their music, right? Especially when they are a music tradition, whether it is a group or whether it is a community or whether it is a village, they are very inwardly focused. They have very little to do with, they don't fuse with any other schools. Right. So especially when you go out to, outside and in all these regions, in the Asian regions where I see,
Sorry.
inward. Yeah, no problem.
Oh, great. There you go. Perfect.
So it's very inward looking. So they know only about their school and they have very little knowledge about, anything outside of that.
And what is the reason for that in your experience?
I think because it's, firstly, there is a, I think the rituals and traditions are very powerful in this part of the world. There is a little bit more rituals and traditions. I mean, the context of classical music is not just the music itself, but then it also percolates into spirituality, into religion, into philosophy, several other things make it up. Music is only one part of it. Almost always in all these places, the performance of the music is to, arouse your spiritual nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big difference between West and the way it is treated in the West and the way it is treated in, particularly in these regions.
Yeah. Jürgen, and from your perspective, if we take these big differences and sometimes this big question, how we can, what you said before, how we can find a way to first accept the differences and to accept the diversity of these traditions. What needs to be done and how can we achieve this?
I think the most important thing for me is to integrate something in that what you call classical music. Well, because I mean Bach, just to mention Bach or Schönberg, this is classical music. No, it's Bach is Baroque, but let's say classical music. If you say this is a language, it is only a language for those who understand this music. And it's not, I may be a traditional Indian musician who is dealing with quarter notes and pitches very small and not with a half tone or something like that. But if you integrate these kind of music in what his classical music as an Indian classical musician is, integrate into this orchestra thing. Maybe this is what I mean with when I say let's integrate it, let's put together one language that everybody understands. Maybe the most part of the world is knowing Beethoven, for example, yeah. But there are parts of the world, and maybe they are big enough to say, how can we integrate that to get a common language for other people than they. Did you understand what I mean? Classical music is at one point is not everything, but to get a broader view, you need to integrate some other parts, if you know what I mean. Then you get the result maybe, for example, like Chinese music. If you try to integrate in the work of your orchestra to one new thing. Maybe you get all these Chinese people that don't understand Beethoven, for example. I don't know how. I'm not a composer, but that might be a chance, if you know what I mean.
Hast du dein Video?
Ja, ich weiß auch nicht, warum das auf einmal weg ist. Ach doch, hier. Alles klar. Falscher Knopf. Jetzt.
Right, there you are. Perfect.
Also, that's what I mean about getting integration. I think music is an integration factor, and maybe we have to think about more in depth about how to integrate. I think this is one of the most important things. We don't get peace all over the world. We don't get that. I don't think so. Maybe or in a time that's beyond my living on this earth, let's say. But maybe we have the chance to go on this way, to try. And we have to think hard.
Mahesh, from your perspective, how do you see this idea of integration?
I think while integrating, it will also be interesting for us. It will be good. The good start point is to understand the differences before we worry about integration. And one of the classic difference between the Western, there are three major, so to say, classical thought, right? I'm going beyond classical music, and I'm actually going into classical philosophy or classical thought, right? Classical music of Europe is based on philosophical thoughts, beliefs, and behavior of Europe, of the West. So there is a Western mindset which is very different from an Indian mindset. Right? And the mindset is all based on the underlying beliefs, right? What is our underlying belief? The underlying belief in Europe is rooted in Aristotelian and Plato, right? You have your own Greco-Roman philosophy on which you base your behavior. Your behavior is directly connected with the beliefs, and that belief has a very clear, there is a very clear thought. Life is kind of linear. There is a beginning, then there is an end, there is a right, and then there is a wrong, and then there is one comes after the other. There is a respect for linearity, right? There is a respect for importance for order, and then there is a beginning, and then there is an ending, right? It's a very, very, very different belief as opposed to the Indian belief, right? Which is exactly the opposite. There is no beginning, there is no ending in the first place.
Okay.
Right? Nobody is born, nobody dies, right? Because sometime back I was trying to tell you that in music, what are they trying to achieve? They say that in India, the belief is you have about 1.3 billion people who really believe that this life is a misunderstanding. It's because there is almost like a kind of energy, like electricity, which is passing through me, and that only is me, right? And this wrap, what I'm having around me, like a body, is something which comes, it grows on me, and then it grows out of me. But I'm still there. Right? So that's the theory of.
That's a fine idea, just to understand that. That's great.
Exactly.
That's great.
But then you have 1.3 billion people who believe in that.
Who believe in that? Okay, this is a big difference. It's a big work.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
This is
so
a
now
great.
you think about it, it's not important. Order is not important, right? Everything is important.
Let me take this as a to summarize our first call together in this context. and that's great. Thank you. And with your words and both of your like really and yeah, it's how can we link this? I mean, this is like really big differences. What you just said is, I mean, something really, for me, it's always quite shocking to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's take this positive, this shocking moment and these great dynamics from getting together at least 1 hour once a month.
Yeah.
Next time will be more. There's this circle. The conference of the birds is widening, is largening, and I see really a great potential to learn, to take the Silk Road Cultural Belt as a platform. The idea to understand what the great potential behind all these traditions is and mean and can create.
Absolutely.
Ist das ein Skype-Link? Okay,
But
ich
this
gehe
is
gleich
great
rein.
that we have kind of
Danke, Tom.
identified,
Excuse me, I have to go.
Yeah, thank you both very much. And
But at the end, this last thought of you, how is this diversity to get together to a new point? I guess this is what this video conference is. There are many following to get this point. I guess this is the most important thing, to understand what the others are doing, where they are, how they come from. And this to get an understanding about, and then think about that, how to integrate this one in that. This is really the point, I guess.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much.
It was really great. Thank you.
Great.
Your time.
Bye-bye.
See you. Goodbye.
Have a perfect day. Bye-bye.
Bye.